Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here today to talk to you a little bit about how Simrise. I work with the company Simrise. We're a global flavor fragrance company of heritage, centering care, taste, nutrition, and health. And I'm in the taste, nutrition, and health segment, working with food and beverages. And my colleague Daria and I are part of I lead the global sensory consumer insights, and Daria is close colleague of mine, and we're working at global scale in terms of understanding what consumers would like to have, so that we can provide that to our customers. So if we take a look at the map of the world, I think, and maybe I'll be moving up to a more macro scale now, let's say where we've the talks we've focused on up until now. I think it's fair to say that foods and beverages have an origin within a particular country, region, and culture. Of course, many of the manufactured foods have been around for the longest time, and they have a global scale. But at the same time, we're seeing increasingly, let's say, whether it be Korean food or Thai food or whatever, coming from a regional, local cuisine, and then beginning to find its place in the world. But ultimately, I mean, from early life, already heard something of that, and learning, we have different sensory experiences. This goes on to shape sensory preferences. Yet, to try to get the hang of the controls. But increasingly, due to high level of global connectivity, foods and beverages can reach global scale quite and we could consider then, if we're thinking of flavor, and we're thinking about the world of flavor and understanding that the foods, the beverages that travel across the world, the cuisines that are adopted in one place, having let's say come from local origin, are carrying with them their flavors, if you like. So they're carrying new experiences for consumers in those parts of the world where they have not before. That said, and I think I'll show something like this, the specific application, perhaps even where that flavor ends, can be in a different category of product, but also the meaning can be adapted, because of course I'm talking here about the association with the term rather than the specific sensory property, which of course can differ from one part to another. We've developed within Simrise a platform capability that we call SimVision AI, and essentially we have a large database, if you like. We're taking data from many different sources, online, what's happening there, and what we see in terms of market activity and products in the market. And we supplement this with our own research. And this is structured in such a way as it allows them to analyze it together, and to let's say it's structured in a way where almost like a tree, if you like, so that you can find the pattern in that and the commonality between one part of the data set and another. And we applied some algorithms over this in order to bring the analysis and the interpretation. But what essentially it is allowing us to do is to analyze a lot of data at the same time and to see the pattern in that, and then to learn from those patterns. We're adding to this then with our own research the ability to interpret, say, what those flavors mean to consumers in different places, what those flavors mean to consumers when they're presented to them in different product types. And maybe just a simple theoretical presentation here. If you think about a flavor trend, if you think about any flavor trend, And you think of that in a theoretical sense. And here presented on this chart, I'm showing two examples, Flavour 1 and the Flavour 2. When a flavor presents its first signal, then it can be emerging. And of course, as it would, and on the y-axis here, we have impact. So impact is a combined measure of coming from those multiple different data sources. On the x-axis, we have growth. So if the impact, let's say, is increasingly positive over time, then you're seeing growth in terms of flavor. Now, you could say it would be a cola. Of course, it's been there for a long time, and it would stay perhaps in growing or peaking or mature. And depending, it can go. Let's say it can vary within that cycle, up and down. Variables here being country, variables being product category, because a flavor trend, of course, may express itself differently in one country or another. It may express itself differently in one category or another. But essentially, this is the basis for understanding, let's say, what is the relative impact of one flavor or another in different parts of the world, in different food categories around the world, and how to compare that data. And what this allows us to do now, when we bring it all together, is to then see, for example, this is a representation of mango in carbonated soft drinks. And of course, it would be different if I went to flavored water. It would be different if I went to a dessert type product. We can see here what is the status, let's say, of impact for that flavor in any given country in the world. So when and as I said, this is not the sensory property. This is the awareness of, if you like, of the consumer and the talk and the quantity of product that's carrying that flavor in the marketplace. But you can see quite different patterns here. So, for example, in China, mango is peaking in carbonated soft drinks, also in the US. And so you can see in terms of flavor type, it is not necessarily East means West, if you like, or East being different from West. That can vary from one flavor to another, from one category to another. Quantitatively, they could be different because, of course, we're looking here within country in terms of that flavor and then comparing one to another. And if I give an example then of Korean flavor, so the data we're taking here is coming from the past, so 10 years back into the present day. And looking then at the journey of flavors out of Korea into the rest of the world. And you see patterns in that. So, for example, you get the regional adopters here in Asia, from North Asian countries, Japan, for example, and then into Southeast Asia, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand. And then a move to the USA, and the USA acts like a broadcaster, like a microphone to some extent. In particular, let's say to other early adopting countries, similar language speaking, Australia, UK, and so on. Europe tends to follow the US when things go from Asia to the US and back. And then you get the lead following countries. And so we can follow. Let's say in kimchi, if we look in particular, it's a flavor, but it's also a food, and now you will see kimchi, in fact, flavored snacks in many different parts of the world, and based on this type of analysis, we can begin to understand which Korean flavors are coming next, for example, what pattern of journey will they take as they begin to move around the world. And this is an analysis here looking at the overall category of culinary, and we can see here in terms of which markets are related to one another. This will again vary. It will become different if you go specifically into a given product type within that category, and of course it will vary depending on the category type of product. But again, you can begin to see that things are not happening in a random way, if you like, that there is actually quite a pattern, and that pattern can be understood and followed. It's also the case that flavor trends tend to move across categories. So taking an example of raspberry, here raspberry trend setting in energy drinks, sweet goods, desserts, and ultimately moving across different categories of product and arriving in snack. So an example here being a raspberry flavored popcorn, not, and we're talking health foods here, of course. Yeah, but pleasure and health must go together also when it comes to and just an example again. And so again, you can begin to see that a flavor like kimchi makes way. Of course, it's associated with stuff, but it can begin to make its journey around the world and then from one category of product to another. I talked about the association or the meaning of the flavor being quite different from one part to the other. We also have a platform that is linked to this that we call Flavors for Feelings. And in this case, we first built the platform, and that was to associate various need states and benefits to emotional profiles. And have done this in 27 different countries around the world now. And of course, there are differences there across cultures in terms of how needs, emotions, benefits connect to one another, because that would be culturally based and based on experience and so on. And then we are able to associate flavors to those need states and benefits. And do that for different segments of products, because again, this differs depending on whether it's a functional beverage, whether it's a carbonated soft drink, or whether it's a meal. The associations can be quite different one to another. And this is just a simple example here: raspberry, carbonated soft drink again, and you can see here quite a different emotional profile associated with that. If you are in Thailand, compared to what that would be in the UK, for example, it's associated with well-being and familiarity, whereas fun and sensation is coming much more so in Thailand. You see in the UK, raspberry is associated with familiar, healthy, whereas in Thailand it's fun, it's cheerful, etc. So again, all of this type of information, of course, I mentioned again, it's not essentially profile. This is not telling acceptance toward work. But when it comes to a particular flavor and product you're going to put that flavor into, this becomes beneficial in communicating through to the consumer in terms of what aspiration, need, and benefit, and so on. So yeah, just a few takeaways. Although foods and beverages have an origin within a particular country, region, and culture, increasingly there is global connectivity. There's so much activity online, and people are talking to one another that, let's say, the foods are taking journeys quickly around the world and bringing their flavors and their sensory experiences with them. And although this does tend to get adapted depending on the application and the culture, let's say, of the place where that flavor is brought to. And and here I've just presented a suite of capabilities that enable us to provide a comprehensive understanding then of, let's say, what flavors are important in which parts of the world and how these best appeal to consumers, so that you can flavor a product in a way to give it the best chance of success.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you. Questions from the audience or the virtual one? So I have a facetious question and a serious one. I don't know which one is best. So you get to pick.
Okay.
If we go to the serious first, like I'm really interested in the use of this large data sets. And I think as a community that is not, as the chemosensory community, which is not extremely huge, there is a potential for us to be at the forefront with academia, industry, the public sector as well, and trying to find ways to connect the databases for this type of powerful evaluation. Do you think, as a member of a corporation, do you think that's a possibility? Is it a discussion that we can have as a larger community? There are other types of bridges that we need to break before getting there.
I mean, I think it's an important discussion, and I think, the more we can connect sources of data, the more progress we could make going forward. Of course, within a company, when we build something like this, it is enabling us to do business, and for that reason, then we're quite protective of.
But maybe apart, right? Of course, there are different interests, various.
At the same time, I show you a high level here. The bigger value going into something like that and asking some very, very specific questions, because once the data is there, and there's lots of ways and means you could approach that. So yeah.
Well, then we're leading to my facetious question. So I'm Italian by origin, and I wonder if we can have maps of food crimes that Italians are so passionate about. So for instance, like the map preference for pineapple over pizza or other things, because this would make many of my friends really happy. So if you can give me one of those images, would make a larger community happy.
Yeah.
But so jokes aside, I definitely see the power of this type of just here. Any other questions from the audience, or we're all hungry? Oh, Aaron, please. We're not hungry yet.
That's one quick question. Thank you, Connor. Very nice talk. I'm a bit interested when you mentioned about the journey of the itself. Do you also track the, I would say, modes of transportation? So, for example, are these moving through social media? Are these moving through people going to that country, bringing back their food types, introducing the two cultures? The same way like how Vietnamese were very popular in UK, within the like UK went to Vietnam. Yeah, like just people bring back and recreate it.
Yeah. No, I mean, in terms of are we tracking that per se, I mean, we can tell which part of the data is making the biggest contribution, if you like, and which part of the data is making the biggest contribution over time. So I guess that answers that in part, but it's not something we thought about, but it's interesting to begin to look at, how do you make impact? Yes.
Thank you. So one question from the in-person audience and then one from the virtual one. So we're not having lunch, guys, today. Yes, patience.
This scene vision, is it more on a macro fancy on the community or different part of the country? Does it even back to more on the molecular level, some of this information being just by
This, as I presented it here, is high level in that regard. We do market mapping also. So in other words, when we do sensory profiles of products from a given market, well then that then tells more about the sensory profile within a given marketplace. And then of course you can go a step further back if you would have analytics of those products.
And the last question is, do you have any observation of what usually causes a certain flavor to become a trendy flavor?
I mean, again, it's not something we're analyzing per se, but the online presence is very important, and the bigger the story, that can very quickly bring impact. Important could fizzle out very quickly then. So, but online it certainly has a big impact. But the market as well. I mean, if there are products that are launched into market and they become successful, well, then they create a story in themselves. The companies do this quite well. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Connor, very much. Thank you to all of our speakers, Linda and Dr. Teo, and thank you to all of you for participating.